have. You're live. Intro didn't play. Please continue.
Pardon?
You're live.
Well, welcome to our Ocean Studio, the Yahowah blog. We are evidently live and quite a surprise. This is the fourth show from our Ocean Studio today. We had one successful long show this morning and two 15-minute episodes where we had some audio challenges. We have found the culprit. It was in the cables connecting this microphone here to our sound mixing box that had somehow frayed, and we think we have it resolved now. We did not know, however, that our intro had played and that Wookiee were ready to go. So I'll try to peer around the Wookiee here and before he takes a nap. We're in the midst of a series called Messiah and Son. And the reason I'm using those terms is that almost everyone on the planet, when you say Messiah and Son, will think you're talking about Jesus Christ. But that's not the case. Jesus Christ never existed. There was no one named Jesus in the province of Yehudah in the 1st century CE. In fact, no one was named Jesus until 1629, when the name finally appeared in text. The letter J that we know today was invented in the early 17th century. And Christ is a horrible replacement for Messiah. It's based upon the Greek term that speaks of the application of drugs. And so it would be drugged. And it may be among the worst choices of titles for this important character. He was called and anointed 3 times by Yahowah as the Messiah, but at his Dowd, there is no mention ever of anyone by the name of Jesus or Iusus or any other variation of that name. And so Dowd was anointed by Yahowah 3 times as Messiah. He spoke of his role as a Messiah in fulfilling Pesach, Matsah, Bikuwrym in year 4000 Yah, which was 33 CE, delivering the prophecy as Gabuwrah, God's most capable and competent man. And so we just have no ongoing prophecy about a Mashiach, a Messiah, that is going to return in our future for a 3rd time. Now, Dowd is going to have 3 lives. He is returning for a 3rd time, but as he returns for the 3rd time, he is going to be known as our king. He is Malak. And so if you were anticipating the return, it would be of Dowd as the Malak Dowd, King Dowd, in his 3rd of 3 lives, not the Mashiach Dowd, although he is clearly Yahweh's chosen Messiah. There's only one person that Yahowah refers to as his son, where he says also that he is his father, that is of Dowd, David. So to purloin that title and rob it from Dowd and apply it to a myth is really a despicable crime. So it is Dowd, according to Yahowah, and he ought to know, that is the Son of God and who is the Messiah, and he will be the returning king. He will have lived 3 lives, one as the king and Messiah, the chosen one of Yisrael, who defended Israel, who united the country, who acquired Jerusalem, who also acquired the Temple Mount, and who wrote around 100 of the Mizmowr, which are the Psalms, and most of the Mashal, the Proverbs. And he is the subject of much of the text of Shamuel. And so there's just really no one that comes anywhere close to Dowd's notoriety. His name is actually mentioned 1,100 times in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. That's considerably more than is Moshe's name. I think Moshe's name is in the 600 or 700 range, and Dowd's in the 1,100 range. The only name that is more frequent than Dowd's is Yahowah's. And even when you get into a name like Yahud, which designates one of the 12 tribes, the most important of the 12 tribes, the word, name from which Jew has been corrupted. It is actually a combination of and a compound of Yahweh's name and Dowd's name. So he is the individual with whom we are talking, because the 89th Mizmowr, was written in his honor. Now, that does not mean that the only person discussed in the 89th Psalm is Dowd, because while Dowd is the most interesting man who ever lived, the most important man who ever lived, well, Dowd is the former and returning king of Yisrael. Well, he is the Messiah and the Son of God. Well, he is the Bashar, chosen one. He is the shepherd. He is a prophet. He is the Gabuwrah, the powerful, courageous influence of God. He is, in my view, the single most important title that is applied to Dowd. He is Elion. They don't get any better than that. That is the ultimate title that is applied to Dowd. Elion means that it's all things pertaining to God's influence, and that's who Dowd is. So he is also one of the three Zarowa, the greatest of the three Zarowa. He bears the Torah's interpretation of Zarowa, which is sacrificial lamb. Moshe is the first Zarowa. He bears the connotation of being a ram leading the flock, a protective shepherd, if you will. And the third Zarowa, who is the Choder, who is Dowd's herald, who is the lesser luminary to the greater luminary, who is the tree of knowledge, pointing out the nature and location and identity of the tree of lives. He is the third Zarowa, but his definition of Zarowa is derived from the word's verbal root. Zarowa is based upon zera, which means to scatter and sow seeds and then cultivate them for a productive harvest. And so it is in reference to the third Zarowa, working on behalf of the second Zarowa, that this next statement is revealed. And the reason that Dowd's Zarowa is making it his way known into this magnificent psalm that God has written on behalf of his beloved son Dowd is that without that final Zarowa, Dowd simply loses all of his credibility, accolades, attributes, and achievements. And it's worse than Dowd just having all of those things stolen from him. And that's a big deal, since he's the single most important character in God's story. And so when you're stealing the title Son of God from God's Son, you're stealing the title Messiah from the one that Yahweh anointed as the Messiah. When you're stealing the title Chosen One from the one that Yahweh chose, that's a really, really serious offense. But it's far worse than that. Because Yahweh, in the opening line here of the 89th Psalm, said specifically that Dowd was his coworker, the one through whom he had made a promise that he would fulfill and enable the covenant. You see, the covenant is based upon 5 conditions and 5 benefits. The conditions of the covenant is that we walk away from the Babylonian influence of religion and politics, the intermixing of truth and lies that is the ether of these things. And second, that we walk to Yahweh and allow him to perfect us. We do this by observing the fulfillment of the Moed Mikre, and the first 3 in particular, because it's the first 3 that actually provide the benefits of the covenant. And it's the second of those 3, Matsah, which Dowd fulfilled in 33 CE, that removes our guilt so that we look innocent in front of God. The third condition of the covenant is to trust and rely on Yahweh, which means that we have to disgorge any affinity for religion or politics or militarism or conspiracy, so that our reliance and our trust is exclusively towards Yahowah. We rely on him entirely. The fourth condition of the covenant is that we closely examine and carefully consider its terms and conditions, that we understand what it is that God is offering to us and expects in return from us, because these terms and conditions are non-negotiable. But the good news is the benefits are then guaranteed. The fifth condition of the covenant is that we as parents circumcise our sons on the 8th day, so that we remember and they remember this covenant. It serves as the signature and sign of this covenant relationship. It is to be separated from all others at the place where life is conceived. And so it's a marvelous indication and sign, our signature, if you will, on our participation in the covenant. Then there are 5 benefits of the covenant. They are that we become immortal. That is enabled by Dowd's fulfillment of Pesach, Passover, to open the doorway to life. That we become perfected. We become not guilty in God's eyes, so we don't even have to be saved. It's the fact is that we appear innocent and totally resolved of guilt, because Dowd, in his second of 3 lives, carried our guilt on his soul into Sheol, which is equivalent to a black hole, to deposit it there, never to be seen again. The third benefit of the covenant is that we're adopted into God's family, literally becoming his sons and daughters. Dowd happens to be the first to receive that distinction, and he led the way. So Dowd is called the Bikuwrym, the firstborn of Son of God, and he fulfilled Bikuwrym, which is firstborn children. The fourth and fifth conditions or benefits of the covenant is to be enriched and empowered, as well as enlightened and enabled, emancipated. But these are this enormous elevation in terms of our capability. And that fourth and fifth condition of the covenant is really essential for us. And the reason it's so essential for us is that the only way we can leave this protective enclosure that we call Earth, that is so conducive to life, and go off and explore the rest of the universe, is for us to shed our physical bodies and have our nephesh souls enveloped in light and energy, such that we can transition the dimensions from 3D, where we are now, into the 4th, 5th, 6th, and ultimately the 7th dimension, where there is an infinite increase in opportunities and capabilities, enormously, just the scope of everything increases exponentially with each iteration of a additional dimension. And to be able to process the choices that would be available to us and the options that are available, we will have to be enormously enriched and empowered. And God doesn't want to do that on behalf of any of our souls until such time as we as individual souls demonstrate to God that we can be trusted. Are we willing to listen to him? Are we willing to be observant, paying attention to what's around us? Are we willing to contribute, to engage, to add something to the equation, to work alongside God to make life better for everyone involved? And when we make a mistake, God's not looking for perfection. Perfection is a really lousy religious concept, because if we were all perfect, we would be like little mini gods. And what fun would that be for God if he had a whole lot of mini-me's around him? Wouldn't be in the least. It's our flaws that make us interesting. It's what makes one person different than another person. And so what God's looking for instead of perfection is that when we make a mistake, when we stumble, when we fall, that we have the wherewithal to get up, to admit we did something that may have caused that problem, and that we resolve it, admit the issue, and learn from it, and get going, go on again. And so these are the 5 benefits and 5 conditions of the covenant. And they were enabled by Dowd fulfilling Pesach, Matsah, and Bikuwrym in 33 CE. No one would have known any of that. You would not have been able to capitalize on Yahweh's declaration that Dowd is the one who enabled the benefits of the covenant. You wouldn't even know what the benefits of the covenant were. No one had ever articulated them before I did so in the Yahowah series that you see over my left shoulder. No one knew that there were 5 benefits of the covenant until I articulated them. No one knew that the 5 benefits of the covenant were derived through the fulfillment of the first 3 Moed Mikre. No one knew that it was Dowd who in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, actually enabled and honored the promises of Pesach, Matsah, and Bikuwrym as they were delineated in the Torah so that we might enjoy those benefits. No one knew that it was actually Dowd who was the Messiah and the Son of God, the chosen one, the former and returning king, who in his second of 3 lives fulfilled Pesach, Matsah, and Bikuwrym, which means there was no Jesus. The whole thing is just a nasty lie, a horrible myth, and that it was Dowd who was crucified by the Romans. And he wrote this in his 22nd and also in his 88th Mizmowr. No one understood how Dowd's sacrifice of his Bashar body enabled the fulfillment of Pesach so as to open the doorway to life, or that even that Passover was the doorway to life, until this series of books that is sitting over my left shoulder, 35 of them. And even further from the realm of human understanding at the time is the fact that Matzah is enabled by Dowd taking our religious and political guilt, taking it with his soul after the demise of his physical body, his Bashar on Pesach. His Nefesh soul carried our guilt into Sheol, hell, to deposit it there, never to be seen again. And in that way, it was removed from us so that we look innocent in God's eyes. We can be comfortable being exposed to him. No one knew that was the case. No one knew that the Bikuwrym was Dowd, and therefore he is the one who fulfilled Bikuwrym, firstborn children, or that Dowd gave you the exact date that he would fulfill Chag Matzah in 33 CE, which is year 4000 Yah, when speaking to Daniel in 555 BCE is Gabriel, or that Gabriel is in fact Dowd. All of this, including the fact that I was the first to deduce that Dowd will be returning with Yahowah as Elion, as the very influence of God, on Yom Kipurym in year 6000 Yah, which is sundown, the 2nd of October in 2033. And that for that to occur, the mortal remnant of Yisrael must be perfected, must be cleansed, purged, if you will, is a better term, purged of their religious guilt on Taruwah by the Adamah Parah, who is making the adulterous woman of Numbers 5 acceptable to witness Yahweh's return with the one who was pierced, his firstborn, Dowd. No one knew that the next harvest was Shabuah, or that the next gleaning is Taruwah, or what days they will be fulfilled, or what else will be happening along with them. All of this was unknown by humanity until our collaborative effort. And as I've done a whole series now, no one was aware that the purpose of Sukkah is not to build a hut. It is to understand that God is giving us a second chance at Eden, and that he's restoring the earth to the conditions of Eden and allowing a mortal remnant back into the garden to get it right, to show that we're worth God's attention, to show that we will listen, that we are observant, that we are responsive, that we're willing to engage, that we will contribute to the relationship, and we can be trusted, even when we stumble, to get back up. This is all so that Dowd, when he returns on Yom Kipurym, can be king of forevermore. His throne exists, according to God, as brilliant as the sun. His throne happens to be the Kipporth, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, which he will anoint when he returns on Kippurim and use the goats and the bull's blood, Elias and myself, for that process. And that we're ultimately, after 1,000 years of a reconstituted Eden on earth, those of us who were harvested and gleaned on Shabuah and Taruwah will have the opportunity to teach, to guide this mortal remnant of Yisrael and the Goyim who will be serving in the return to the garden, so that they also can earn God's trust and respect, and that collectively we can all be trusted off of this planet, be enriched, be empowered, be enabled, be emancipated, so that we can visit all 2 trillion galaxies, and there's probably many more. We'll understand what is considered dark energy and dark matter. We'll be able to visit every planet of every solar system, of every galaxy in the entire universe. If that were to ever get wearisome, God will create a new one for us to enjoy. This is what's being offered. And it all revolves around Dowd, who was the primary Zarowa. But in this case, the Zarowa being mentioned beside you and on your behalf is the Zarowa, who is the one cultivating the productive harvest. That's the Choder. That's Hanakri, the observant foreigner. That's the one that Yahowah refers to as the Katsir. He is also the one Yahowah refers to as the Lakat. He is the one that Yahowah refers to as the Parah, the productive and fruitful bull. And God here is saying that the Zarowa is enabled with tremendous power, courage, character, and ability. He is Gabuwrah. He is Gabuwrah. He is Gabuwrah. Why am I making such a big deal of Gabuwrah? Because, listen, when you read Isaiah, and the 17th chapter of Isaiah is really the place where the framework of future history is established for us, where we know the events that now have, but only recently, would lead to the demise of the government in Damascus, and such that the Assad regime would be overthrown by terrorists, and that how ultimately Israel is going to have to respond to the rise of the Islamic State as a result in Damascus. This then leads, we are told, to the establishment of an Islamic terrorist state carved out of the heart of Israel, making Israel indefensible. And it's following all of these things, of which the first has already occurred and the others are imminent. And then God says that after that occurs, there will be the Shabuah harvest, and that is of mature grain. And then following the Shabuah harvest, there will ultimately be the Taruwah gleaning, and it is of olives. But the evening of Taruwah, which is that lakat, that final gleaning, where people literally disappear. Their souls are like a river of light going to heaven, where their bodies disappear into nothingness because they have no value. In fact, they're a liability off of this planet. And they are now with Yahowah and with Dowd, able to witness and later contribute to this great transformation that God has in store. And that evening of Taruwah, we learn that Yahowah is in the process of, he will bring everyone who has the right attitude and aptitude into Jerusalem to benefit from the purging of the religious and political guilt by the Adam of Parah, and that he will at the same time be eliminating all traces of religion and its host, militarism, and its mechanisms, from the earth. All anti-Semites, all conspiratorialists will be gone. So if you're overtly political, religious, conspiratorial, anti-Semitic, God's going to incinerate you. It's going to be over. He has to get rid of all the trash to set us back up for his return and re-entry into the garden. There was no religious trash, no political garbage in Eden. So this all happens on Taruwah, with then the earth being terraformed, which is going to be hugely battered and beaten by this time. There'll be all manner of wars and poisons and toxins and the like. And at this moment on Taruwah, then, Yahweh was reestablishing the earth in the conditions that we witnessed in Gan Eden. And it's at that point, 10 days later, after the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, that Yahweh is allowing us to witness Dowd's return with Yahweh, and then we re-enter the garden. But in Yashayah, we're told that this individual who is responsible for these harvests, that he is going to be the Parah, this productive bull. We're told that he is a Zarowa, this very term that is used here. And so we have a much more comprehensive picture of the terms God's using for this. So this Zarowa, we're told in Yashayah 11, particularly, that this Zarowa will have the spirit of Yahweh. I think it's the only time in the entirety of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms that anyone is specifically said to have the Ruach of Yahweh. Yahweh can apply, he has this Ruach spirit however he wishes, and he has afforded it to a number of people throughout time. But the only place where it actually says the Ruach of Yahweh is going to be given to a man, the Choder. And then it goes on to say that there are 6 additional Ruach that are given to the Choder. This Choder, which is a stem off the main branch, a sucker that gives life to the fallen tree trunk that is Yisrael, that's Shemesh, that's rooted into everything that Yahweh has to offer. And this Choder then is given 6 additional Ruach. The first is intelligence. He is unlike anyone who has come before in terms of his ability to do the very things that I have been sharing with you. I've said, I'll probably list 30 things that no one understood prior to my collaboration with Yahweh and Dowd. No, that didn't just come out of the ether. It came because Yahweh provided his Choder with the Ruach of Chokmah, of supreme intelligence. Supreme intelligence as it comes to the things that are important regarding our relationship with God. He then gave the Choder something that has been the single most important gift of all, bien. That's the ability to make the connection between things to understand. Now, God didn't begin this. He didn't say, I'm giving you the spirit of you're going to be a know-it-all. You're going to know everything there is to know. No. What God is trying to demonstrate between Dowd and then myself is that we humans have the capacity to earn God's respect. We can be diligent. We can be devoted. We can be steadfast. We can engage. We can make a contribution. We can stumble and fall and be mistaken and correct our mistakes and grow from them and get back up stronger than before. We can be observant. We can listen. We can learn. And so the beauty of bien is that it's this glue that is, it once you have come to know, yada, then by bien, you're making the connections. You're finding the common denominator. You're assessing the probabilities. You're finding common themes. And you're tying things together such that you can understand what God is saying. Because knowing is infinitely better than believing. But understanding is infinitely better than simply being aware. And so this Choder is given the spirit of being, understanding, after being given the spirit of intelligence. The third spirit that the Choder is given is a surprise to most, because they think that the Choder is a messianic figure. He's not. He represents and serves the Messiah. He's not the Messiah. The Messiah is a shamak, big honkin' branch of the tree of lives. The Choder's a stem, but similarly rooted. And the fourth is that the Choder is Etzah. Etzah is Etz, tree, with the hay ending, which means that this is a tree that provides fruit such that his counsel, for the first time ever, is able to present God's entire story from beginning to end, from the garden back to the garden. What happened that failed with Adam in the garden, and why God had to foreclose on that experience, and why God is bringing us back into the garden and allowing us to have another opportunity to prevail. He is the first to be able to put the whole story together. That's the Ruach of Etzah. And then we have this Gabuwrah. The reason I went to it, the Choder, this Zarowa, has Gabuwrah. It's this, literally the Ruach of Gabuwrah. Strength, empowerment, capability, courage, character, this willingness to get the job done, to see it through, to battle, to fight, to perform, to accomplish the mission. Gabuwrah is a valiant and capable, courageous individual. And then we're told that the Choder is got the spirit of Diath. And the reason that's so interesting is that as the Etzah Diath, he is the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge in the garden is the Etz Diath. And lastly, the Choder is given a spirit of Yara, respect and reverence for Yahowah, because that's really what we're studying. That's really what we're trying to reintroduce, trying to encourage. So this Zarowa, he, like his king, whom he serves, is Gabuwrah. Now, Dowd is more Gabuwrah than is the Choder, but nonetheless, you can't serve a man as Gabuwrah as Dowd without an enormous amount of gabod yourself. Just the bottom line. You know, you can't have a limp straw next to a strong tree and expect that wimpy little limb to have any positive influence. They never going to be useful or knowledgeable, helpful. And so Dowd's herald, his Zarowa, is bold, courageous, worth telling the entire world, you are wrong about Jesus. You're wrong about Bar Kokhba. You're wrong about Muhammad. And you're wrong about Dowd, because Dowd is the real deal. He is the Messiah. He is the King. He is the chosen one. He is the Son of God. He is our Savior. And he has already lived 2 lives and will live a third. He's coming back as Elion, the very influence of God in our world. This next thing says that Zarowa will be your strong hand. God wants us to know that he works through men. It's been his standard modus operandi from the beginning. He does not want to work alone. There was no reason for God to create this universe and our planet conducive to life, and then to conceive life to go off and do everything alone. Unfortunately, in the garden, we didn't measure up. We weren't trustworthy enough, not interesting enough, not observant enough, not good enough listeners to be allowed out of it and to continue in a relationship with Yahowah. So we're given another chance at that. And God says, I can prove to you that it is possible for someone to be strong enough to endure the criticism of the world and to stay the course with me. he found that with Moshe. He found that with Dowd. And he found that with his Choder. A firm hand, confident, such that we can prevail. And this strong influence, the Choder and this strong hand, will be raised up at your right side. Now, Dowd is at the right hand of God, and the Choder is at the right hand of Dowd. And so the Choder is at the right hand of God now, because there is Dowd is in Shamayim, and I'm here battling it out for your attention, trying to convince you to listen to God, to stop being religious, to stop being political, to give God's testimony a chance. And so at this point, I'm serving at the right hand of God, and I will be kind of at the extended right hand, moved down a notch, very happily so, by the way, by Dowd. So that is the way that Yahowah has it established. And so this is one of those statements that, yes, Dowd is a Zarowa. Yes, Dowd is the greatest of the Zarowas. Yes, Dowd is the most Gabuwrah of all men. Yes, Dowd is raised up on high. Yes, Dowd is the right hand of God. All of those things. But for Dowd to be reestablished, to have his credibility and esteem and accomplishments restored, he had to have someone who filled that same role for him. And so that is a very important analysis of what is an exceedingly important statement. I should also tell you that in the 7th Mizmowr, Yahowah stated that Dowd was his appointed Shaphat, judge, through whom he will vindicate. We read in Isaiah 40:10 that God would be returning with his Shagach, his empowered leader and impassioned defender. He said his Zarowa, his sacrificial lamb, his protected shepherd, would be speaking for him. And in the next statement, we're told that Dowd would be Ra'ah, the shepherd tending the Almighty's flock. And at the conclusion of Yeshaya 40:11, we learn that Dowd would be gathering God's lambs, Zarowa, Hugh, in his strong and capable arms, serving the flock as the protective ram and sacrificial lamb. Now, in Solomon's dedication speech to all Yisrael, as recorded in 2 Chronicles 6, the king's son revealed that the Nakri, would speak for his father as the Yad, the hand of God. He would reveal that Dowd is God's Shazak, most powerful and passionate leader, and that the Nakri would be a Zarowa for the Zarowa. These two are always intertwined. What fits one most often fits the other. Now, that's not saying they're equals. They're not. Read Bereshith, Genesis 1, and the creation account. Both luminaries are called Gadol, great. But one is greater than the other. You have a greater and lesser luminary. Just as the moon reflects the sun's light. It's still the sun's light that you're seeing in the darkness of night. And they are working together, but the sun is greater than the moon. It's like the tree of Chaim lives and the tree of Etz Dayath in the garden. The tree of lives is vastly more important to you, but you can't get there. You can't capitalize upon it until you've availed yourself of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. So these two are very similar to one another. And almost all of their insights, personalities, attributes, attitudes, and the like. So they are both Zarowa. It's just that Dowd is a more important Zarowa. Now, we turned previously to 2 Samuel 7, and we were reminded that David, is Yahowah's Ebed, his co-worker. Upon his return, he would be God's Neged, most conspicuous and informed guide, although he shares that title also with his Zarowa. God said that he would make Dowd's Shem, name, and reputation Hagadol, the greatest of all, and he has and will continue to do so, glorified more than any other on earth. It is Dowd that we should be focusing upon, no one else. In addition, Yahweh announced, well, no one else besides Yahweh, but Yahweh's, people just don't have an appreciation of Yahweh's character and nature. When I said we should be focusing on Dowd, that is not a slight on Yahweh. That's what Yahweh wants. He wants us to relate to him through his beloved son Dowd. He wants us to acknowledge that he accomplished all of this on our behalf by working with his son Dowd. He wants his son Dowd to receive the accolades and the credit. The whole purpose of the 89th Mizmowr is to sing Dowd's praises. So if I sing his praises, I'm doing exactly as Yahweh does. And when we follow Yahweh's example, we're always in the right place. So God, as a father, is exceedingly proud when we focus our attention on his beloved son. Sure, Dowd will admit, and Yahweh will acknowledge, that nothing Dowd did would have been possible. He could not have returned, obviously, in his second of 3 lives to fulfill Pesach as the lamb, or Matsah with his soul carrying our guilt into Sheol, and then to be retrieved from Sheol to return to Shamayim as the firstborn, fulfilling firstborn children, without God orchestrating the whole thing. But God didn't do it alone. He did it with his son. Yahweh has announced that he would Be'eth, Ashah, engage in the covenant family through Dowd. He actually said that Dowd was the enabler of the Bereth. Now, as we progress to 2 Samuel 7:12, God categorically states that he would establish Dowd's reign over his kingdom, while reestablishing the family home, inclusive of Dowd's throne, which is the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, forevermore. Then Yahweh revealed, Ane Haya, Lahu La'ab, Wa Hu Haya, La'ane Laben. I was, I am, and I always will be for him as a father. And he was, he is, and always will be for me as a son. Mindful that we learned from reputation, Yahweh affirmed that Dowd's Be'eth family and Malakah kingdom would Aman be established and endure ad olam as a restoring witness forevermore. When we turned, and I have shared this with you previously, to the 103rd Mizmowr Psalm, we discovered that Yahweh's Barak blessings would be provided through Dowd's Nefesh, soul. He would be Gaal, the kingsman redeemer, who paid the price for us to live. Then in the 19th statement, we found another affirmation of Dowd's Keshe, his throne, and his Malkuth kingdom, which would serve as a mashal, a vivid picture of what we should expect to see as things play out between father and son, and how they serve us as well. Further into the text in Psalm 103:20, we learn that Dowd is Yahweh's Gabuwrah, his most courageous and capable man. Moving on to the 20th Mizmowr, we find that God will be dispatched as, the Dowd will be dispatched as God's principal Ezer, collaborator, to assist those struggling on the day of trouble. Moving through the 6th verse of the same psalm, we read that Yahweh intends to Yasha provide salvation through his Mashiach, Messiah. This bold declaration concludes by saying that God intends to respond from heaven through the Gabuwrah, through the characteristics of Dowd's Nefesh soul, of the most courageous and capable of all leaders, his Yamin, his right hand, through whom he will Yasha, save. whom he will deliver from harm's way. Then for those of us who require a little more reminding, once again we read that the Malak king is the one offering Yasha, salvation. Dowd, the king of Yisrael, the returning king of forevermore, is our Savior. He delivered us from our own guilt. Now, addressing Dowd, the beloved by name, the Malak king is called the Shamak, the most important of all branches. And Jeremiah 23:5. Now, this presentation includes by reminding us that Yahweh Shadak Anaknu, that Yahweh is our source of vindication because he is right. Now, these facts are indisputable. They are consistent. They are compelling. Dowd is the primary Zarowa, with the secondary and third Zarowa being Moshe, and then finally the Choder. He is the Mashiach. He is the Messiah. He is Ben El, the very Son of God. He is Yasha, our Savior. We will conclude this presentation in this next statement from the 89th Mizmowr. It reads, being correct and vindicating, Tsadaqah, being right, honest, and fair, being accurate, just, and acquitting. Regarding executing good judgment and justly resolving disputes, Mishpat. Mishpat is a compound of mai, which means to ponder the implications of Shabbat, making good decisions, being judgmental, exercising good judgment. Serve as the foundation of your throne, a loving relationship and genuine mercy, along with a steadfast commitment to the truth, back to Amunah. Encounter those who enter your presence. 89:14. Now, this is another one, just as I have shared that there are so many common threads between Dowd and Yada, between the king and his herald, the greater and lesser luminary, the two trees in the garden. There are also many commonalities between Yahweh and Dowd. And God doesn't mind me saying that at all, because it's Yahweh who says of Dowd that he is Elion. Dowd is going to be the influence of God in our presence. El, God. On means all things pertaining to, and the Yod, that is the hand in the midst of those two, speaks of the influence. The very hand of God, the influence of God in our presence is Elion, it's Dowd. So when I equate characteristics of Dowd to Yahweh, I'm reinforcing the fact that God picked this man because they were simpatico, because they shared common attributes and attitudes. So realize that Dowd was exceedingly brilliant and articulate, that he was both courageous and compassionate, that Dowd was steadfast and enduring, that Dowd was engaged, willing to do the work, that he was a great student and tremendous teacher. So it reads, being correct and vindicating, regarding executing good judgment and justly resolving disputes. Dowd is known more for Tsadaqah than anything else. Dowd is Dowd because he was right. Dowd could serve as the Passover lamb and take our guilt into Sheol because he was right about God. Nobody has ever been more Tsadaqah regarding God than Dowd. I think I share an enormous amount of Tsadaqah with Yahweh. And I know that everyone now who is engaged in the covenant along with me is Tsadaqah. As a matter of fact, God says twice and through Yeshaya Isaiah in the 57th chapter, when he's speaking of the disappearance of those who are ingathered, withdrawn during Shabuah, that those who are called home and withdrawn to God at that time and who disappear are all Tsadaqah. So we are, in fact, Tsadaqah. Dowd was Tsadaqah. He's just the most Tsadaqah of us, being correct and vindicated. Now, the only way that you can be correct is to be judgmental. You have to execute good judgment. You got to be able to justly resolve disputes. You need to know how to think about things so that you can make a rational conclusion, adroitly pondering all of the questions required to make a rational and moral decision. Dowd was correct. He was vindicating. And he was these things because he executed good judgment, resolving disputes. And they serve as the very foundation of Dowd's throne, his kishay, his seat of honor. Why? Because Dowd's throne is the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. It's the place where we come clean with God, where our guilt is ultimately resolved, where we are allowed to enter God's presence. That is the throne of Dowd, the mercy seat, the Kipporeth of the Ark of the Covenant. Kipporeth, it's from Kippur. It's the same word that forms the basis of Yom Kipurym, the day that Dowd's going to return to anoint the Kipporeth, mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, his throne. A loving relationship and genuine mercy. You do not fulfill Passover as the very Lamb of God by allowing the Romans to rip the skin off your body and then nail you to an upright pole, torturing you with the most excruciating form of torture ever devised, to open the doorway to life, or even worse, accept the guilt of every covenant member and carry it into hell and spend a day in hell, separated from your Father, separated from everything. You imagine the pressure and the pain and the anguish and the darkness, the fear of having to be in hell. And he did this to remove our guilt. There is no greater expression of love, of devotion, of affection, of generosity, of kindness in the history of mankind and all of the annals of history. No one has done anything that even comes close to comparing to this. And of course, Dowd had a steadfast commitment to the truth. Read his Mashal, read his Mizmowr. Listen to what God has to say about him. Just as Father was Emunah, the Son is Emunah. They're trustworthy, they're honest, they're reliable, they're dependable. This is a extraordinary statement. And what he concludes it by saying, everyone who enters your presence is going to recognize these things. You know, Dowd's return is presented in Zechariah, the 12th chapter, where Yahweh says that the spirit of acceptance is going to fall upon the city of Dowd, the house of Dowd, the family of Dowd, covenant family, and those who are awaiting his return. And then Yahweh is going to return accompanied by the one that was pierced, crucified. And that Israel is going to mourn for him as an only son, because he is that of God. And we're going to recognize that Dowd has earned our respect. We're going to see him as courageous and as bold and as compassionate. We're going to see him exactly as Yahweh has described him. We're going to have just tremendous respect for this man. And everyone who is allowed into his presence upon his return is going to have this same experience, this exact same view. That everyone who will be given the opportunity to meet Dowd can be can anticipate that they will love him. You can't be there without what he has done for us. He is just simply the greatest, most important man who's ever lived. So since Yahowah has pronounced that Dowd was Tsadaqah, right, noted his misvat, ability to exercise good judgment, and transitioned to Dowd and 89:13, referring to him being reestablished by the courage of his Zarowa and by God's influence through the Azaziad. It is likely here, and I have read it as such, commented on as such, that the Makon, the foundation of Dowd's Keshe, his position of honor, is genuine love, loyalty, devotion, and a steadfast commitment to the truth. And that Yahowah, when he's speaking of your throne, is speaking of his son's throne. He constantly says that he's creating a throne for Dowd, that it will be everlasting for all people, all places, for all time. So in this case, God is speaking of what we are going to experience when we enter Dowd's presence. It's an enduring, loving relationship with Dowd, developed with God as a result of chesed, genuine mercy. And this is what Dowd experienced from his father, and it is what he has offered to us when he volunteered to fulfill Pesach, Matsah, and Bikuwrym. Following his example, we can count on the fact that Yahweh's mercy comes to those who trust and rely upon that which is Tsadaqah, correct. Being right is what perfects and what actually perfects the imperfect. It's not faith. In this way, the Zarowa sacrificial lamb, Dowd, becomes the purveyor of salvation, particularly when his herald reintroduces you to this realization. Yahowah made it possible for Dowd to serve as the Pesach Gael, as I have shared, and then fulfill Matsah en route to Bikuwrym in 33 CE, over nearly 2,000 years ago, which was year 4,000 Yah. It facilitated the benefits of the covenant. He would enable Israelites to immortalize and perfect their souls, enriching and empowering the covenant in the process. And because he has done this, we are committed to cultivating the Shabuah, sevens, and Taruwah trumpets harvest, the fourth and fifth Mikra invitation to be called out and meet with God while serving as heralds to Dowd's Kippurim return. And this brings us to the next statement, which I will keep in abeyance for us to continue and to delight your mind, your eyes, your ears with the very words of our God as he sings the praises of his beloved Son and our Savior, the Messiah and King, Dowd. Good evening.